In the annals of popular culture, few characters ride the line between myth and history as smoothly as Zorro. With his black mask, sweeping cape, and flashing rapier, Zorro has become one of the most enduring icons of the Old West and Spanish California. But behind the legend lies a fascinating story, one rooted in colonial history, rebellion, and the real-life figures who may have inspired him. Today, we take a deep dive into Zorro, who he was, where the story came from, and the historical backdrop that gave birth to this shadowy defender of the people. The birth of Zorro. The year was 1919, when pulp writer Johnston McCulley introduced a masked outlaw named Señor Zorro in the story The Curse of Capistrano. Published in All Story Weekly, it was never meant to launch a legend. But when Douglas Fairbanks starred in the silent film The Mark of Zorro just a year later, audiences were captivated. A swashbuckling swordsman, bold rider, and trickster who left his enemies humiliated, Zorro instantly became a symbol of resistance against tyranny. Macaulay's character was set in early 19th century California when the land was under Spanish and later Mexican rule. California at that time was a world of sprawling missions, ranchos, and political corruption. It was a land where indigenous peoples and poor settlers often suffered under the boots of governors, soldiers, and wealthy land barons. Into this backdrop, Zorro emerged, a nobleman by day and a masked avenger by night. His mission, to fight injustice, defend the weak, and mock the powerful with his clever signature, a Zed slashed into wood or cloth with the tip of his blade. The dual identity. At the heart of Zorro's story is his double life. By day, he is Don Diego de la Vega, a wealthy California nobleman, refined and mild-mannered, uninterested in politics or swordplay. By night, he becomes Zorro, cunning, daring, and unstoppable. This duality is one of the reasons Zorro resonated so deeply with audiences. He was not just a fighter, he was a symbol of hidden strength, of ordinary people having extraordinary courage, and his disguise allowed him to move between the world of privilege and the world of the oppressed, bridging the gap between them. The historical inspiration. But was Zorro real? Like Robin Hood, Zorro is not one single person, but rather a composite of several figures, all tied to the history of Spanish and Mexican California. Historians point to at least three possible inspirations. First is Joaquín Murrieta, often called the Robin Hood of El Dorado. A Mexican miner turned outlaw in the California gold rush of the 1850s, Murrieta was said to have fought against Anglo-American oppression, striking fear into the hearts of settlers while protecting fellow Mexicans. His story, half hero, half bandit, circulated widely in dime novels and legends, and it likely shaped Macaulay's Zorro. Second is Salvador Vallejo, brother of the famous General Mariano Vallejo. Known for his wit, charm, and daring, Salvador was remembered as a man who often defied authority and embarrassed officials. Though not a masked outlaw, his flamboyant reputation may have fed the archetype. And third, some scholars believe Macaulay drew from the bandits and rebels of California's Rancho period, men who resisted corrupt officials, raided the wealthy, and fought for personal justice. Zorro is, in many ways, a romanticized composite of them all, part outlaw, part nobleman, part swashbuckling folk hero. The Spanish and Mexican California. Setting to understand Zorro's world, we must look at the California of the early 1800s. At that time, the land was ruled by Spanish colonial governors and later by Mexican officials after Mexico won independence in 1821. The society was deeply stratified. Wealthy rancheros controlled vast lands, missions dominated indigenous life, and ordinary peasants often suffered under forced labor and exploitation. Corruption was rampant. Soldiers abused their power, governors demanded heavy taxes, and local officials often ignored the struggles of common people. This created fertile ground for stories of a masked savior who could humiliate corrupt leaders while championing the oppressed. Zorro's legend is not just fantasy, It reflects the real frustrations and hopes of Californians living under colonial rule. Zorro as a cultural icon. After Fairbanks brought Zorro to the screen in 1920, the character exploded in popularity. He became a template for countless masked heroes that followed, including Batman, who borrowed heavily from Zorro's dual identity, secret lair, and symbolic calling card. From books to television, movies to comic strips, Zorro's story has been retold again and again. Guy Williams brought him to life in Disney's 1950s series. Antonio Banderas reinvented him for modern audiences in The Mask of Zorro and The Legend of Zorro. Each version kept the spirit of the character alive, a man who fights injustice with courage, cunning, and style. The mystery of the real Zorro. So who was Zorro really? Was he Joaquín Murrieta, the vengeful outlaw? Was he inspired by California nobles like Vallejo? Or was he simply the imagination of Johnston McCulley, given flesh by the hopes and dreams of ordinary people? The truth is, Zorro is all of these things. He is myth and reality woven together. He represents the defiance of the oppressed, the cleverness of the trickster, and the timeless fight for justice in a world of corruption. Legacy of the fox. Zorro's name means fox in Spanish, a fitting title for a character who survives by his cunning. More than a century after his creation, the masked rider still gallops across our imaginations. He is a reminder that even in the darkest times, courage and wit can cut through tyranny like the slash of a blade. And whether or not there was ever one real Zorro, his story speaks to something larger, the eternal hunger for heroes who fight for those without power.